Welcome to Beyond the Music, the podcast where we dive into the lives and stories of people who shaped the world of music. I am Lena.
And I am Karina. We're both classically trained singers, and this podcast is our chance to explore the fascinating intersections of music, history, and humanity.
In our previous episode, we discussed everything about Leoncavallo's and Puccini's La Bohème. And today we will be exploring synesthesia and music.
Ooh, that sounds really good.
So first I'm gonna explain a little bit for the people who don't know the word synesthesia, what it is. Synesthesia is a fascinating condition where the stimulation of one sense automatically triggers another. Imagine hearing a violin note and seeing a flash of blue, or tasting sweetness when you hear a chord. It's not imagination or a metaphor. For synesthetes, these connections are automatic and consistent. Only a small percentage of people, around 2 to 4%, experience it. But for those who do, it's a lifelong trait. So Karina, I'm curious, have you ever had a moment where a sound felt like it had a color or shape to it?
No, but I can definitely say when I listen to certain music, I can feel it in my bones, in my heart. So I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, it's probably not the same because it's not one of the senses we have which is triggered by the music. But well, there are many different forms of synesthesia. Maybe that's a far, related one to that, far related. But some of those forms are especially tied to music. So we have chromesthesia, where sound triggers colors.
Ooh.
So a trumpet might appear as golden bursts and a cello as deep purple waves. But it does not have to be the same color if there are two people with the same chromesthesia, they see colors, but it can be connected to different parts. So it can be a different color for everyone who has this condition.
Cool.
Then we have the auditory tactile synesthesia, where sounds create physical sensations, like a flute line brushing across your skin.
Oh, neat.
So this would be close to what you explained, kind of. And then we have the spatial sequence synesthesia, where music appears mapped out in space, like a floating 3D chart, which I think is quite cool. Who needs 3D glasses?
Oh, it sounds like a superhero, like a superpower.
Exactly. Yeah. There are even rare cases where sounds triggers tastes or smells. So imagine tasting chocolate when you hear clarinet.
Oh.
But of course, it can also go the wrong way,
no.
so you never know. So, synesthesia has haunted music history like a beautiful room, sometimes real, sometimes metaphor, always inspiring. Let's take a quick tour. In the early ideas of this condition is in the 18th century. Sir Isaac Newton, you probably already heard that name before.
Absolutely, gravity.
Exactly. He famously mapped the 7 notes of the diatonic scale onto the 7 colors of the spectrum.
Oh.
He wasn't a synesthete. He was looking for cosmic order, a harmony between light and sound. A few decades later, Louis Bertrand Castel built the ocular harpsichord, which is a keyboard that raised colored ribbons and shone light through tinted panels with each note. So imagine a Baroque rave sound triggering color in real time, kind of. Then, in the Victorian and early modern ages, we have the color organs, The 19th and 20th centuries saw a wave of inventors creating instruments to play light. So we have Alexander Remington's color organ and Thomas Wilfrid's clavilux. Yeah, clavilux, foreshadowing the modern concert light show and VJ culture.
Cool.
And then we have Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov and Alexander Scriabin. Both had strong key color associations, but they kind of disagreed. Rimsky described keys like D major as golden or yellowish, while Scriabin's system often followed a cycle of fifth logic aligned to a color wheel. So some musicologists suspect Scriabin's mapping was more philosophical than perceptual. And then we have also Scriabin's Prometheus, which is the poem of fire, which came with a light keyboard. Clavier à lumière.
Oh.
Also, it's called, like in French. That's a part in this music. So he kind of invented that for this part of music. Meant to project color harmonies with the music. A proto-multimedia work, kind of. Whether or not he was a true synesthete, he undeniably composed with color in mind. And then we have Messiaen. He spoke about mode and chord as if they were palettes. Orange, green veils, violet amethyst, blue wild rocks flecked with grey. His orchestration often tries to make those colors audible. Even if you can't see what he saw, you can hear his color thinking and the way he layers timbre. And then we have painter Wassily Kandinsky, who wrote about spiritual correspondence between color and sound and was fascinated by Arnold Schoenberg's atonality. The idea that abstract visual art could be composed like music helped midwife the 20th century visual music movement. Think Oscar Fischinger's animations or sections of Disney's Fantasia. Not synesthesia per se, but art inspired by synesthetic ideals, kind of. And then, like today, in jazz and pop, Duke Ellington described timbre as colors. Pharrell Williams has discussed colors associations guiding his production choices. Billie Eilish and Phineas have talked about designing songs and visuals around shared color feelings.
So even modern day, they are still doing it.
Exactly. And visual artists on social platforms often paint specific songs, not as fan art, but as an attempt to capture the actual colors of textures they experience while listening. So when you choose repertoire, Karina, do you ever lean on color words, even metaphorically, like let's make this passage more silver or less bronze?
Wow, no, I've actually never thought of it that way. I've always thought of it more from an emotional standpoint.
Mm-hmm. I mean, me too, but I think it's quite an interesting idea to just go and try to sing it in a different color. Like, not as we say we sing in a different color, but like really imagining it in a different color, kind of, instead of an emotion. Because we have also the color theories about how color is also connected to emotions. So we have green for envy and stuff like that, red for love.
Oh, yes.
And also for blood, like, so you have for anger,
passion.
like, exactly. So we have already this connection of color and emotion. So why not try that out one day? I think it's kind of interesting.
Definitely. I think that both of us should try it, and then we come back and we compare notes.
Sounds good. So, why does this happen? Scientists have two main theories. The first is cross-activation. Extra connections between sensory regions mean hearing and vision are linked more directly. The second is disinhibited feedback. The pathways exist in everyone, but in synesthetes, the brain's filters are weaker, allowing sensory spillover. So those are the two main theories about how it works. What's remarkable is how consistent synesthetic pairings are. If a child hears middle C as red, they'll almost certainly hear it as red decades later. So it doesn't change.
Wow.
So, for synesthetes, the music can feel like multi-channel cinema. You're not only hearing sound, you're also seeing shapes or feeling textures. That extra stream changes emotion, memory, and creativity. Many synesthetes report amplified effect. A luminous major chord can feel literally sunlit, while dense clusters might look like heavy slate or spiky black.
Then I don't think that they will like my topic that I've picked.
That second sensory track can heighten chills, catharsis, or melancholy. There's also emotional precision. If E major is constantly citrine for someone, a modulation in G minor might feel like the stage lights suddenly turning teal gray. Clear. Immediate shifts in mood. And composers with synesthetic tendencies sometimes orchestrate by palette, pairing, say, clarinet and vibraphone, because it makes a transparent blue, or avoiding trumpet and piccolo because it overexposes to white. Harmony as color grading. It's also a reharmonization that swaps a bright Lydian moment for a darker Phrygian one. Can be experienced as a tint shift. And then we have form through color arcs. Some artists sketch color timelines first, then write the music to cause that sequence of hues. And in the part of performance and interpretation, singers and players may use color words as cues. Enter with a smoky violet, finish on a cold silver. This can tighten ensemble intention, even for non-synesthetes, because color metaphors are fast emotional shorthand.
Mm-hmm.
And lighting and staging can align or clash with the synesthete's inner visuals. When they align, the experience feels clicked in. When they clash, it can be jarring. Also, with the memory and learning, synesthetic double coding, sound and color shapes can aid ear training for memory and cue recall. A tricky entrance might be anchored as the return of the amber spiral, not just letter C. And there's some evidence that synesthesia is overrepresented among artistic fields, and that certain kind of vivid mental imagery correlate with creative output. That doesn't make synesthesia a superpower, but it can be a distinct creative workflow. Also, practical takeaways for listeners and educators would be to try color mapping a piece. Like assign colors to motifs or keys to track from. Or use texture words, grainy, glassy, velvet, to shape tone production. For ensembles, agree on a shared palette for sections, surprisingly effective for dynamic and blend. So if you imagine an aria's B section as a cooler hue than the A section, how would that concretely change your vocal choice? vowel color, vibrato, breath energy. Would that change anything for you?
Oh.
If you say the B section is a cooler hue.
I would try to, because it is a cooler color, I would try to cool the voice, not as warmth, not as full body sounding.
Mm. Would that also kind of then affect your vibrato and breath energy?
No, I would try to keep the vibrato as easy as possible. Oh, it's very hard to explain.
Okay, so there are some controversies and also open questions for that topic. Like, synesthesia sits at the crossroads of poetry and neurology, which means debates.
As always.
Like, most of us share loose mappings. High sounds feel bright, low sounds dark. Those are cross-modal correspondences, common and learned. True synesthesia is typically automatic, specific, and stable over years. For example, this chord is this exact hue every time. There's also ideesthesia, the concept, not the raw stimulus, triggers the experience. For instance, the idea of Wednesday or the named pitch F sharp evokes a color. Some researchers argue much of synesthesia is actually concept-driven. Others maintain the sensory link is primary. Labs often use consistency tests across time. If someone's mapping for hundreds of items remain highly stable weeks or months later, that supports a synesthesia diagnosis. Public figures sometimes claim synesthesia. Scholars caution that performative claims for branding or press aren't the same as lab-verified synesthesia. So that doesn't invalidate the experiences, but it reminds us to separate artistic narrative from clinical definition. And there are two leading models. We have one, the cross-activation, extra or stronger connections between sensory regions, and the disinhibited feedback, which is a typical connection but less gating, so signals spill across modalities like I already explained. It could be both, varying by person and synesthesia type. Developmental factors like pruning in childhood may shape which links remain. So, can synesthesia be trained or induced? Short answer: you can train strong associations, but whether that becomes true, automatic synesthesia is unsettled. And there are psychedelic drugs, and disclaimer, you should never take drugs, only prescribed by your doctor. And some neurological conditions can produce synesthesia-like states, but they're usually temporary and less consistent than developmental synesthesia. That raises the question, are these the same phenomenon or just phenomenological lookalikes? Then we have mapping disagreements and cultural influence in that topic. Why does one synesthete see C major as red and other as green? Genetics, language, culture, and environment likely intertwine. Some mappings may be idiosyncratic fingerprints and not universal laws. And then we have the ethics and design in performance. If we simulate synesthesia in concert through visual sense or haptics, are we inviting empathy or overwriting the synesthete's private experience? Best practice might be to collaborate with synesthetes on the creative team rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all visualization. And there's also the question, how do emotion, memory, and imagery interact in synesthesia? Are there reliable educational benefits to color coding music beyond metaphor? Can assistive tech meaningfully broaden access, for example, translating music into visual or tactile streams for deaf and hard of hearing audiences? This would be questions where there's still space to research, and so those are not answered yet, as long as my research goes. So, if you were designing a multi-sensory concert, would you prioritize visual color, haptic feedback, or spatial movement of sound first, and why, Karina?
Oh, always the hard questions. I can't answer that. I have no clue.
I mean, if you would go to a concert marketed as a synesthesia experience, what would you expect to be experiencing?
I really don't know. I'm sorry, I really don't know.
For me, it would be probably really the classic one, like that I would kind of see colors while playing the music. I actually wouldn't like to smell stuff while hearing music. Experiencing things like wind or something like haptic, sensual feeling would be also okay, but it depends on the feeling they create, kind of. And I only can think of like blowing wind into the audience faces. So
yeah. I mean, really, there's no boundaries. It's endless.
So, for the future directions, today technology is bringing synesthesia into new arenas. Visualizers and AI tools can simulate music to color experiences, giving audiences a taste of what synesthetes see. Some researchers even wonder if non-synesthetes can be trained to borrow these perceptions. So imagine concerts where the visual aren't just lighting effects, but genuine translations of sound into color or form. Perhaps the future of music is multisensory, letting us all glimpse the world through a synesthetic lens. So, I hope you enjoyed synesthesia and music as much as we did. If you liked this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Next time, we'll delve into another fascinating chapter of music history. Until then, keep listening and discovering the stories beyond the music. See you next time.